You ever get one of those letters that just ruins your morning before you even finish your coffee? Yeah, imagine flipping through a stack of bills and coupons thinking it's just another Tuesday when you spot a crisp white envelope with the Greenwood Hills HOA seal stamped right on the front. My heart just about jumped out of my chest. I mean, I knew they'd been a pain for years, but this felt different. And sure enough, I tear open the letter and the first words I see, asterisk, asterisk, final notice of fine $250,000 for violations of HOA rules, dot asterisk, asterisk, $250,000. For what? Exactly. Did I build a casino in my backyard and forget about it? I stood there staring at that letter, reading and rereading, trying to wrap my head around it. They said my fence was an eyesore, my horses were too close to the property line, and my barn wasn't aesthetically appropriate. That's the kind of phrase that makes you want to laugh and scream at the same time. My barn was painted a shade they didn't like, so now they're threatening to foreclose on my ranch. You gotta be kidding me. But here's the kicker, they'd been trying to drive me out for years with their petty fines and complaints. This time, though, they'd gone too far. I slammed the letter down, grabbed my jacket, and stormed out the door, ready to remind the HOA who exactly they were dealing with. I pulled up to that soulless modern building, hedges cut with military precision, not a leaf out of place. Walked inside, and the air felt as cold as a bank vault. The receptionist barely looked at me till I dropped the fine amount. Her eyes went wide like she'd just seen a ghost. "I'm here for Roger," I said. And before she could stop me, I made a beeline for his office. Didn't even bother knocking. I pushed the door open, and there he was, Roger Thompson, HOA president, the guy who wrote the rules and loved wielding them like a club. He gave me this smirk, all smug and syrupy. "Mrs. Anderson, to what do I owe the pleasure?" I dropped the letter on his desk with a thud. "This is what you owe me, Roger. A plus $250,000 fine for nothing. Explain yourself." Roger, of course, started rattling off the violations, acting like my fence was a crime against humanity. The more he talked, the angrier I got. "You're really trying to bankrupt me over a paint color?" I asked, and he just leaned back, loving every second. "If you don't pay, we'll take further action." And then, with a little flick of his wrist, he picked up the phone. Maybe it's time we called the authorities. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't just about my fence or my barn or even about money. No, this was about power. Roger wanted to prove he could break me just like he'd done to so many others. But here's what Roger didn't know. I wasn't just any rancher. I'd inherited this land from my father, and I'd been here since before the HOA was even a twinkle in a developer's eye. I wasn't about to roll over. As Roger started dialing, I looked around his office. I'd had enough of being polite. So while he was trying to sick the cops on me for a beige barn, I started rifling through his desk drawers. Yeah, maybe not my proudest moment, but desperate times, right? That's when I found a file labeled Property Deeds and Titles. I opened it and froze. There on top was my deed signed, stamped, showing I was the sole owner. But as I kept flipping through, I realized I owned a whole lot more than just my ranch. My family's name was on half the land in Greenwood Hills, including the very patch the HOA office sat on. Roger had no clue. He thought he could run me out, but he was standing on my asterisk land the whole time. He finished his call, turned to me, and tried to threaten me again, but I laid the deed on top of his pile of paperwork and leaned in. "Roger, I own the roads, the parks, even your office. Without my permission, your HOA doesn't exist." For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. He sputtered, "That's impossible. You're just one property owner." But he knew. Deep down, he knew he'd lost control. As I walked out, adrenaline racing, I realized this was bigger than me. I called Charles, a lawyer I trusted, and we started digging. What we found was a mess. Illegal amendments, bribes, money missing from accounts, rules made up on the fly to squeeze homeowners. The more we uncovered, the madder I got. So I started talking to my neighbors' folks who'd been bullied into paying fines, selling at a loss, or staying silent out of fear. I wasn't alone. There were dozens of us. We formed a coalition, knocked on doors, shared our stories. Some people were scared to stand up, but the more the truth came out, the more they joined us. Roger, meanwhile, kept sending threats, legal letters, calls, even tried to drag me into court for defamation. That was a joke. All it did was give us a bigger stage to air his dirty laundry. The media caught wind. Suddenly the press was knocking and the HOA's secrets weren't secret anymore. That's when the real twist hit. An anonymous tip landed in my inbox full of emails and financial records from inside the HOA. It was everything we needed: proof of bribes, forged votes, illegal fines. Charles put together a lawsuit, and we took it public. Roger panicked. Board members started jumping ship, blaming each other, trying to disappear. At the trial, Judge Reynolds, a woman who looked like she'd seen it all, listened to both sides. Roger's lawyer kept spouting the usual, just enforcing the rules, but it was all smoke and mirrors. When I took the stand, I laid out every fact, every dirty trick, every family hurt by Roger and his cronies. Then came the final blow. One of Roger's own board members admitted on the stand that they'd never actually held a legal vote for the rules they'd enforced. They just made it all up. Judge Reynolds didn't waste time. She ruled the HOA had acted illegally, ordered it disbanded, and made them return the fines. The room erupted. For the first time in years, people felt free. But Roger wasn't done. He tried to sue me again, this time in federal court, for damaging the HOA's reputation. Charles and I fired back with a counterclaim, bringing every piece of evidence to light. When Roger took the stand, he fell apart. Couldn't explain the missing money, couldn't justify the bullying, couldn't answer why he targeted my property in the first place. The verdict was clear. Roger was finished, stripped of his title, facing criminal charges, and finally forced to answer for everything he'd done. Greenwood Hills was free. What happened next? The real work: rebuilding. We turned the old HOA office into a community center. Folks who'd barely spoken before were now planting gardens, running events, starting a farmer's market. Kids who'd been afraid to play outside now ran through the streets laughing. Even some old HOA loyalists like Mrs. Phelps from 2 doors down came by to apologize, ready to be part of something better. Yeah, Roger still tried to hold on, but his power was gone. He even showed up one day looking like a man who'd lost everything. Tried to apologize. I told him, I'm not the one you need to make it right with. Just leave us alone. He nodded and walked away. The neighborhood kept growing stronger. Now, when I sit on my porch at sunset listening to kids play and neighbors chat, I know the real victory isn't in a courtroom or a fat check from the HOA. It's in every tomato growing in the community garden, every handshake between neighbors, every kid who feels safe again. We built something better together out of the ashes of control and fear. So tell me, what do you think real justice looks like? Would you have stood your ground or just paid the fine and moved on? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And hey, if you've ever tangled with an HOA or had to fight for what's right in your own neighborhood, I want to hear your story. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep this conversation going, because nobody should have to fight alone.